The lights inside the theater dimmed slowly, and the crowd settled into a restless silence. Thousands of people packed the auditorium, their whispers blending into a low hum of anticipation. The judges sat behind their glowing desk, flipping through notes and exchanging tired smiles after a long day of auditions. For most of the audience, it was just another night of talent show performances. Until a man named Arnel Pineda walked onto the stage. At first, nobody reacted the way they usually did for flashy contestants. There were no giant props, no dancers, no dramatic introduction video with emotional music swelling in the background. Just a slim Filipino singer in a simple black jacket, holding a microphone with both hands like it actually mattered to him. Even Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair with a cautious expression. He had seen thousands of singers over the years. Some were talented, most were forgettable, a few completely embarrassed themselves on live television. Simon had learned not to expect much. "What's your name?" Simon asked. "Arnel Pineda, sir," he replied with a nervous smile. "And where are you from?" "From the Philippines." A small cheer rose from one side of the crowd, but it faded quickly. Simon nodded politely. "And what are you singing tonight?" Arnel paused for a moment before answering. "An old rock song, but in my own way." Simon raised one eyebrow. That answer alone already worried him. Rock songs were dangerous on talent shows. Contestants either screamed their lungs out trying to imitate legendary singers, or they completely destroyed songs audiences loved. Simon had witnessed enough painful auditions to know where this usually ended. "Well," Simon said carefully, "good luck." The music started. A single piano note echoed across the theater. Then another. The audience leaned back in their seats, waiting politely. Arnel lowered his head, gripping the microphone tightly. For a brief second, he looked terrified, like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Then he sang the first line. The room instantly changed. His voice wasn't just good. It carried something raw inside it. Something emotional and powerful that wrapped around every word. The tone was smooth, but there was pain hidden underneath it, like every lyric came from somewhere real. Conversations in the audience stopped immediately. Even Simon looked up from the judge's desk. Arnel continued singing softly at first, almost holding back. His voice moved effortlessly through the melody, building tension little by little. The crowd watched carefully now, realizing this wasn't going to be another average audition. A woman near the front row slowly lowered her phone, completely absorbed. One of the judges mouthed, "Wow." But Arnel wasn't even close to finished. As the chorus approached, the instruments swelled louder. The drummer joined in. The guitar roared to life. The atmosphere inside the theater shifted from curiosity into electricity. Arnel closed his eyes, and then he unleashed the note. The sound exploded through the auditorium like lightning. It wasn't just high, it was perfect, sharp, emotional, massive. The kind of note that hits people directly in the chest before their brain even processes what happened. The audience froze. For one impossible second, nobody moved. Not a single clap, not a whisper. The entire crowd went completely silent. Even the band looked stunned. Arnel held the note effortlessly, his voice soaring over the music with unbelievable control. The power behind it sent chills across the room. You could actually see people's faces changing in real time, their expressions shifting from curiosity into disbelief. A teenage boy in the audience grabbed his head. One woman covered her mouth with both hands. And Simon Cowell, the man famous for showing almost no emotion, slowly leaned forward in his chair. His eyes widened, because he knew exactly what everyone else realized in that moment. This wasn't normal. Arnel finally released the note, and the silence broke apart instantly. The theater erupted. People jumped to their feet screaming. Cheers thundered through the room so loudly that the music nearly disappeared underneath them. Audience members waved their arms wildly in the air while others simply stared at the stage in complete shock. But Arnel kept singing, and somehow, he got even better. Now the confidence had arrived. The fear from earlier vanished completely. He moved across the stage with fire in his eyes, pouring every ounce of himself into the performance. His voice danced between soft emotional lines and explosive rock vocals that shook the entire building. The judges couldn't stop smiling. One of them laughed in disbelief after another impossible vocal run. Simon shook his head slowly, almost like he couldn't understand what he was hearing. The song built toward its final chorus. The audience already sensed another huge moment coming. You could feel the tension growing again, thousands of people holding their breath together. Arnel stepped closer to the front of the stage. The spotlight hit his face. And then came the second note. Higher than the first, stronger, cleaner, absolutely unreal. The crowd lost it. Screams exploded from every corner of the theater. Some people actually stood on their chairs trying to see him better. The energy inside the building became pure chaos, but Arnel remained perfectly locked into the music like he had entered another world completely. Simon suddenly started laughing, not because it was funny, because he genuinely couldn't believe what he was witnessing. The camera caught him turning toward the other judges with an expression that practically screamed, "Where did this guy come from?" By the end of the song, the entire audience was already standing before the final note even finished. Arnel lowered the microphone slowly, breathing heavily. For a moment, he simply stood there in silence. Then the theater detonated with applause. The ovation became deafening. People screamed his name. Others wiped tears from their eyes. A few audience members were so emotional they couldn't even clap properly anymore. Arnel looked overwhelmed. He bowed repeatedly toward the crowd, clearly trying to process what had just happened. But the biggest reaction came from Simon. The famously harsh judge stood up. Not slowly, immediately. And when Simon Cowell gives a standing ovation that quickly, everyone notices. The crowd roared even louder. Simon pointed directly at Arnel from behind the desk. That, he said into the microphone, was unbelievable. The audience screamed again. Simon waited for the noise to settle, though it barely did. I've heard people attempt songs like that for years, he continued. Most of them fail miserably. But you, he paused, shaking his head. You hit notes tonight that honestly shouldn't even be possible. Arnel laughed nervously while the crowd cheered. Another judge leaned forward eagerly. Your voice doesn't just sound powerful, she said. It feels powerful. There's emotion in every second. I got chills. Me too. Another judge shouted over the audience. Simon looked at Arnel carefully. What's amazing, he said, is that you never looked like you were showing off. You sang like your life depended on it. That comment hit Arnel deeply. His smile faded slightly, replaced by emotion. Because in many ways, Simon was right. Music had saved his life. Backstage interviews later revealed pieces of Arnel's difficult past. Years earlier, he had struggled through poverty, uncertainty, and painful personal loss. There were nights he didn't know how he would survive. Nights where music was the only thing keeping him moving forward. He performed in tiny clubs, crowded streets, small bars where nobody listened. But he kept singing anyway. Because somewhere deep inside, he believed his voice mattered. And now here he was, standing on one of the world's biggest stages while thousands of strangers screamed his name. Simon leaned back again, still smiling in disbelief. You know what I loved most? He asked. Arnel shook his head. That moment in the middle of the song. The audience already knew exactly which moment he meant. Simon pointed toward the crowd. They went silent, completely silent. That almost never happens. Usually people are cheering, shouting, waving their arms. But when you hit that note, he snapped his fingers softly. Everyone froze. The theater erupted into cheers again just remembering it. Simon laughed. That's how you know somebody special is standing on this stage. Arnel lowered his head emotionally. Thank you so much, sir. The judges began giving their votes. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Finally, Simon grabbed his microphone one last time. Arnel, he said, this competition is full of talented people. But every once in a while, someone walks onto this stage and reminds us why we love music in the first place. The audience became quieter again. And tonight, Simon said carefully, that person was you. The crowd exploded. Arnel covered his face as emotion overwhelmed him completely. Cheers formed in his eyes while confetti lights flashed across the theater ceiling. Backstage, contestants and crew members stared at monitors in disbelief. Some were clapping, others simply stood speechless. One producer whispered, "That's going viral tonight." He was right. Within hours, clips of Arnel's performance spread everywhere online. Social media exploded with reactions from viewers around the world. How is this guy real? That note gave me chills. Simon's face says everything. I replayed that part 10 times already. Millions of views poured in overnight. Fans began sharing stories about how emotional the performance felt. Some said it reminded them never to give up on dreams. Others admitted they cried during the final chorus. Professional singers reacted too, praising Arnel's unbelievable control and emotional delivery. But what truly captured people's hearts wasn't just the voice. It was the humanity behind it. Viewers could feel his journey in every lyric. They could hear the years of struggle, sacrifice, and determination inside those notes. And that made the performance unforgettable. The following week, reporters asked Simon about the audition again during an interview. He smiled immediately. "Oh, Arnel," he said. "That was one of those rare moments." He explained how difficult it actually is to surprise him after decades in the entertainment industry. "I've heard thousands of singers," Simon said. "But occasionally, someone walks in and completely catches you off guard." Arnel did exactly that. When asked about the famous note that silenced the crowd, Simon laughed again. "I knew right then," he admitted. "The audience reaction told me everything. You can't fake silence like that." Meanwhile, Arnel's life changed overnight. People recognized him on the streets. Interview requests flooded in. Music producers suddenly wanted meetings. Fans waited outside theaters hoping for photos or autographs. But despite the attention, Arnel remained humble. In one interview, he explained what he felt during that massive moment on stage. "I closed my eyes," he said softly, "and I forgot about the cameras. I forgot about the judges. I just sang from my heart." That honesty only made fans love him more. Weeks later, his performance continued gaining momentum online. Reaction videos appeared everywhere. Vocal coaches analyzed his technique frame by frame. Musicians praised his control and range. But ordinary people connected with something deeper. Hope. Because Arnel represented every person who had ever been underestimated. Every dream ignored. Every talent hidden behind difficult circumstances. He reminded people that greatness can come from anywhere. Sometimes from a tiny apartment. Sometimes from years of struggle. Sometimes from a man quietly walking onto a stage while nobody expects anything special. And sometimes, from one impossible note that changes everything forever. Months later, audience members still talked about that night. People remembered exactly where they were sitting when Arnel hit the note. Some remembered the goosebumps. Others remembered Simon's stunned expression. A few simply remembered the silence. That strange, magical silence that swallowed an entire theater because thousands of people suddenly realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Those moments are rare, not just on television. In life, most performances entertain people for a few minutes before fading away. But every once in a while, an artist creates a moment that stays with people long after the lights go dark. Arnel had done exactly that. Even years later, clips of the performance continued resurfacing online. New viewers discovered it every day, often reacting the exact same way as the original audience. Shock, disbelief, emotion, and always that same comment beneath the videos. The crowd went silent, because silence can sometimes say more than applause ever could. It means people are overwhelmed. It means something reached beyond entertainment and touched something real inside them. That night, Arnel's voice did exactly that. Near the end of the season, Simon spoke directly to contestants during rehearsals. The competition had become fierce by then. Talented singers, dancers, and performers were all fighting desperately for their moment. But Simon reminded them about something important. "You know what people remember most?" he asked. "Not perfection, emotion." Then he mentioned Arnel again. That performance worked because people felt something. Backstage contestants nodded quietly, because they knew Simon was right. Technical skill alone wasn't enough. Audiences remember moments that feel human. And Arnel's performance felt painfully human from beginning to end. On finale night, the theater invited several fan-favorite performers back onto the stage. When Arnel's name appeared on the screen, the audience erupted instantly before he even walked out. The reaction surprised even him. As he stepped under the spotlight again, thousands of people stood cheering. Simon smiled proudly from behind the judge's desk. Arnel looked around the theater slowly, emotional once more. Not long ago, he had been another unknown singer chasing impossible dreams. Now an entire crowd waited eagerly just to hear him sing again. Before the music began, Simon leaned into his microphone one final time. "You know," he said, "there are performances people enjoy, and then there are performances people never forget." The audience cheered loudly. Simon pointed toward Arnel. "And yours," he said, "belongs in the second category." Arnel nodded gratefully. The lights dimmed. The music started. And once again, the entire crowd fell silent, waiting for the moment that had already become legendary.